I think we can start. Because we should keep the time. It's a real pleasure, and it's also an honor to have here as distinguished guest a member of the Moldova Parliament. He is a veteran of the Black Sea and the Balkan Security Forum. He is attending this forum for the third time. This is why I don't need to have to give an exhaustive introduction. I don't need to introduce him to you, but I think we can mention that he has a robust political career. He successfully occupied ministerial positions and worked in important NGOs and played key roles in the Republic of Moldova's democratic process. He is at the climax of his career, being Speaker of the Moldovan Legislative. So we have some priority interests, and today we'll discuss about Transnistria and the election interferences. Last year there was the referendum for the EU and also parliamentary elections. So probably we need to discuss about Russian interferences and how you responded to those attempts to disseminate disinformation, manipulation in Chisinau. So considering that again in September you'll have elections and that you are in the accession process on the European path, can you tell us a few words about hybrid activities and how the Chisinau rulers want to counteract the disinformation campaign around the election process? Thank you very much for the invitation. I am glad that you managed to gather here so many experts, so many interesting figures that present a wide array of opinions. I attended a panel about Transnistrian matters. I'm very engaged in these topics, and we can conclude one thing. A small entity or state with limited resources needs to move fast, especially under pressure, under attack, in a crisis situation, because if you don't move fast, you run the risk of being crushed. Our conclusions after the elections last year and the referendum and the presidential elections, and the elections will have in fall, the conclusion is easy. It is very dangerous to underestimate your opponent or the danger. We somehow underestimated them. We underestimated the resources channeled for this purpose, used to influence the political decisions, the elections, because, elections are the core of a democracy. And the resources were huge. Of course, for the Russian Federation, maybe they were a drop in the sea, but considering what they are spending for the invasion in Ukraine. But for us, the resources were huge. And we also employed human resources, logistics systems to counteract the attacks. The banking system had to invest. We needed logistics in banks, in companies. Each and every country should pay very close attention to these interference tools. The Russian Federation employs two such tools when they target us. Money, dirty money, usually, and organized crime. Organized crime groups. They organize themselves to be more efficient. Of course, money and OCGs. And they also have the army that focuses on occupying territories. But the main tools are OCGs and money to finance pro-Russian political parties, to finance news outlets, media outlets, and opinion makers that would disseminate Russian propaganda. And as I told you, OCGs, organized criminal groups that corrupt at the grassroots. In other election campaigns or years ago, they would rather corrupt politicians and party leaders and influencers, because we very much into influencers nowadays. The system evolved, and now grassroots corruption is their favorite tool. And this consists in wider logistics. Indeed, our institutions managed to document all these efforts. We managed to understand them. We came up with solutions with an antidote. So there is palliative treatment for some, so long-term treatment. But there are some chronic diseases, sometimes chronic cases, where you need to intervene surgically. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a surgeon, but I will explain the parallel in a minute. So although intelligence or police bodies or border police bodies or the Central Electoral Bureau are documenting all these cases, the courts of law need to make surgical interventions. Otherwise, we create a precedent. So if you do not sanction those that interfere with election campaigns, if the intelligence officers gather all the evidence, but the perpetrators are not sanctioned, impunity creates a precedent, and that's dangerous for any democracy. I'm telling you that because we are learning how to counteract these campaigns, these tools, and they do mutate their tools. They do scale up their methods. They use cryptocurrency. They use AI. They use various platforms. You all know that they are being cynically used. We are trying to adapt as it goes and create legal tools and intervene either to give the antidote, give the treatment, or a vaccine. Yes, reporting somebody is advised, but then we need to harshly intervene with legal instruments and justice. We have 3 convicted deputies, but the Russian Federation unfortunately helped them escape, because the Russian Federation doesn't leave their slaves behind. So one oligarch has a final conviction, 15 years in jail, but he was helped by the Russian services, intelligence services, to run away from our country with the help of the embassy. And they just extracted 3 diplomats from the Republic of Moldova and saved them. It will be a hot autumn. We do not underestimate dangers. Yes, I think my colleagues from Romania understood this. They had an election marathon. They had elections this year as well. So in the previous 2 editions of the forum, I mentioned that the Russian Federation uses certain tools in the Republic of Moldova, and we are a testing lab. They test their narratives, they test their interference tools in our country, and then they move to mass production and export them to Romania and to other countries to interfere with elections. And you saw, you felt it on your own skin. You felt how cynical their approach is, how they intervene in the election process. A free election, a democratic election, is the essence of democracy. If an authoritarian regime compromises free elections, they met their goal. So they invest in this interference tools. They invest in the corruption of state institutions, of politicians, that will afterwards lead to the collapse of the state, and the state becomes thus vulnerable to other interferences and further interferences. I will stop here, but I recommend you one thing: be proactive. we are being proactive, although sometimes we are criticized by Western partners. We need to be tough when we react, because we apply the rule of law, and within the limits of the law, we need to be tough on perpetrators. Otherwise, the Russian Federation and OCGs don't understand, polite remarks and political correctness. So we tried to be polite and delicate and tactful 3 years ago. It didn't work. When we started to be tough on them, things happened. Those that accept money and sell their vote for money need to understand one thing. For that, we have sanctions. If you collaborate with the authorities and you prove that you can be treated, then there is a remedy. The law can protect you. But if you do it deliberately and consistently, repeatedly, and you only work in the interests of OCGs, there are legal sanctions to discourage such attacks to democracy.
Thank you, President, for your very complete answer. What else could I ask? Maybe what forms of support, besides building resilience against, let's call it, generically speaking, hybrid interference in the gray area. So what forms of support would be useful coming from Romania and the EU? Well, let me mention only a couple of them. We still need assistance in the cybersecurity area, and I'm going to explain why. We've felt it ourselves, what it means to only have one international airport. Last summer, I remember, we were the victim of a huge attack. We had daily alarms telling us that the airplane was mined, or the airport was mined, or there was a bomb on board. So all this kind of things. Usually they attack critical infrastructure, be it state-owned or privately owned, telecom companies, state-owned companies. So we need to have better cyber security. We need to have everything put together. Of course, there were attacks against the electoral system, against the voting databases. The electoral office has a database against which it checks voters. There's another type of action, sanctions, especially personal sanctions against not only the businesses, but against the very person of the perpetrator. And Romania has swiftly answered our argumented requests and put into place sanctions against certain politicians that help the Russian Federation. And we've seen how bad it is for these individuals to have sanctions against them. And it was quite efficient. So very targeted and argumented sanctions will deter those who, let's say, want to make money out of the election campaign and engage in this kind of actions against the Republic of Moldova. Of course, support on our European integration path, and Romania has constantly been our advocate and our supporter, and we appreciate that enormously. Keep on doing it, please. This will help us tremendously in our European integration process. Thank you, President. I think myself and the audience are impressed by what you've told us today. We are impressed of how the election process was carried out last year. We've seen clear-cut answers on your side, very transparent. We can learn a lot from it, I think. We've seen what would be some very efficient practices and what it means to be tough and firm. I think Romania will keep on supporting your country unconditionally on your European road. And I think that colleagues from other EU member states can confirm that. The ambassador from Greece has also mentioned that we are supporting the Republic of Moldova's candidacy to the EU and trying to speak for you in every European body or instance, especially in the European Commission. And I'd like to thank you for having graced us with your presence today. I wish you to have fair elections this autumn without any breaks or hindrances on your way towards the EU. Please, let's give a round of applause to our distinguished speaker.